TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Farm Stallion Wicked Strong, the fastest winner of the Wood Memorial in over a decade. First foals are arriving now.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we have two races to talk about this weekend. It's the last of the 10-point races. But before we do, let's recap the Sam Davis. You know, this race was interesting. You had your number 2, McCraken, was in this race. And we said the track can play a little quirky there. We were a little worried about him coming in. How do you think he did?
Well, it can play quirky. We didn't think it would be this fast, John. I mean, he set a track record, but I don't think that was really indicative of the performance McCraken had. I think it was a good comeback, particularly the way speed was holding. I mean, you see the long shot on the lead there in the red. He goes 110 and change. That's very fast at this racetrack for two-turn 3-year-olds, and he's still finishing to be on the board. You see McCraken here in the pink cap with his normal sweeping move. He had to move wide on the turn. I do think the track was more carrying speed, so the fact that in his first run of the year he was able to come wide, run them down, finish up strongly there. They set a track record. That's not important because the track was just fast that day. So normally if you would have said beforehand, McCraken, he sets a track record here, you would think, wow, impressive. He moves to the front of the list in the Derby contenders. That's not necessarily the case here with McCraken. A very good comeback relative to how the track was playing that day. I think it was a good race for him. And then Tappert, I think your runner-up there, he took some steps forward. He was where you wanted to be. He was along the inside, up on that pace. He did have to wait for room to open up to get to the outside. So I think, even Tappert had excuses in the race, but a big son of Tappert, late developing, still mentally not there for the Pletcher barn, but they spent $1 million for him. He certainly improved around 2 turns. I think even going a mile and 1/8, he's going to get better. You had to be encouraged if you're Tappert's connections and how he finished in there. He may have shown that he's ready to take that next step also and get on the big stage. Yeah,
personally, I love seeing those Bridlewood Silks, out there with a nice horse again. We've had a long friendship with Bridlewood, so it's exciting to see Mr. Malone and Bridlewood out there, and I think Eclipse is in with them on this horse as well. So they've been to the Derby before with Danza, so they know how to get a horse there with Todd. So it's pretty exciting to see that horse doing well. I guess my big question is, after this weekend, looking at the TCI top 10, did McCraken do enough to crack into that number 1 spot?
Hey, number 2 is not a bad place to be, John. And I mentioned it. You go over here and look at the TCI top 10, and you're going to see it's unchanged. And we like it when it's unchanged. We don't like instability on our top 10. We had that last week with Classic Empire, who's now at that 4 spot, started the year at number 1 for us. But, John, I was very encouraged with Classic Empire to find out that it was a foot bruise with him. To me, you had to figure something physically was not right for, these class smart animals like him. They react when they know something is amiss and they're about to go to the racetrack and it's about to hurt them. So I think clearly the fact that, maybe the physical mishap with him was the bruised foot, which he can easily overcome. That's an encouraging thing. I expect Classic Empire to maybe move back up this list. Very encouraging for him now. But for me, the top 10 doesn't change, and that includes McCraken at the 2 spot. So despite a track record performance and what I thought was a great comeback to sweep wide on a track that was maybe carrying speed and was fast and quirky, he showed how honest he is. He showed how good he is, but he outclassed a group that he was clearly much better than. The disappointing performance in the Sam Davis was No Dozing, who I thought had no excuse. I mean, they were asking him at the 5/8 pole, and he had absolutely no run. So perhaps No Dozing's a horse that did not like that Tampa surface. But he's going to really have to. He was kind of an outsider coming in, and people thought maybe he would develop into a Derby-type colt. Well, after that performance, he really needs to take a step forward if he wants to get on the Derby trail in his next prep.
All right, so before we talk about this weekend's races, I want to bring up a topic that is something that could be developing. We read that Ella Reeves Connections, they may be considering the Florida Derby. Now, here's a colt that has proven to do really well on the local New York circuit there. So it's interesting to see that they're considering to ship down and run in the Florida Derby. Do you think this could be a result that the Wood Memorial has lost its Grade 1 status, and also the Bluegrass Stakes has lost its Grade 1 status? Do you think we're going to start seeing horses that may shift around a little bit?
I think absolutely, and maybe the reason the Woods lost its Grade 1 status is the fact that, sort of that New York weather is unpredictable, and a lot of people don't like to ship in with the cold weather, the potential of a sloppy track this time of year. It's a risky move in your final prep for the Kentucky Derby, and subsequently, it's hurt that race. I remember when the Wood Memorial, back when Bobby Frankel was rolling with Empire Maker, and that was the go-to prep back then. And we've seen trends where Santa Anita Derby was the go-to prep. Now it seems like maybe the Arkansas Derby is the the popular race because all the preps for the Arkansas Derby, the Rebel is a huge purse. Arkansas Derby's worth $1 million. That's where you can see Bob Baffert send his best in now when he sent Bodemeister and American Pharaoh, and obviously I think Mastery's going to be on the Oaklawn path. So we've seen these trends, even the Florida Derby. I mean, you heard Ella Reeves' trainer say, well, Nyquist proved that was a pretty good, pathway,
sure,
and the timing was right to go down there, $1 million Grade 1 race. Again, you're running for a Grade 1 as opposed to staying up in New York in the Wood now and running for a Grade 2. They haven't even assigned a purse value to the Wood Memorial yet. It used to be $1 million, but now it's dropped in grade. They haven't even assigned a purse value to it. So some uncertainty with that race. The downgrade certainly disappointing in the Bluegrass Stakes. I mean, a race that, again, based on his positioning on the calendar and having to compete directly, I think, with the Arkansas Derby, it's affected that race. And the poly track through the years affected that race. Now it's a Grade 2 there at Keeneland. So be interesting to see how that landscape changes as people are really starting to plan now for where they're going to be in their final prep races in late March, early April. And I think we're starting to see the first signs with Ella Reeves' trainer saying, hey, the Florida Derby's in play, because that $1 million purse in the Grade 1 status as opposed to staying at Aqueduct.
All right, well, you mentioned Oaklawn this weekend. We're going to kind of start getting serious about that. We're going to see the Southwest, which is a prep for the Rebel. That race is interesting. It hasn't drawn yet, but we have some probables that we could talk about. There's a horse in there, Looking at Lee, was a horse that you had on the TCI top 10 at once. And there was a horse called Uncontested. Joel, this horse won the Smarty Jones last time out by 5 lengths. Do you think he's the favorite to win this race if he goes in?
He'll definitely be the favorite off that sloppy track win in the Smarty Jones. That was at a mile, though. He's a fast colt. I think he has one way to go of going, and that's to the lead. You see the margin of victory here. Got a 96 buyer, huge speed figure, but again, that was on the slop.
Right.
Speed certainly plays at Oaklawn. I think when it's a tighter, sloppier type surface like that, he's going to face a better group here where he may even get some pace pressure from Cool Arrow, some other horse in here. So I want to see how Uncontested, how he's able to stretch out another 60th of a mile, that speed, be able to maybe compete with some other, dueling type speed in here if the pace scenario is a little more contentious. Can he overcome that and still turn in that type of performance that he did in the Smarty Jones? And you want to talk about a contrast in styles. I mean, a pure speed horse, front-running type horse and Uncontested, and then Looking at Lee, who's going to drop and come from the clouds with one big run, John. I think Looking at Lee has that back class. Certainly, to run as well as he did in the Breeders' Cup and the Breeders' Futurity behind Classic Empire to be on the board, and even was second to not this time at Churchill. He has the back class. Steve Asmussen knows how to win at Oaklawn. I expect him to make his run, but I do think he's pace reliant. He's a deep closer. He needs the pace to back up. He needs Uncontested and the speed to back up. So Uncontested is going to have to get some company early, and there's going to have to be a contested pace for Looking at Lee to get set up here. And I do think he wants further. A mile and a 16th, I think a colt like him, he's going to want an honest pace scenario, maybe second off the layoff, going a little further in the Rebel. Maybe that's what Looking at Lee's trying to do, get a prep in here, and then the big showdown with Mastery, maybe in the Rebel Stakes.
All right, let's talk about another race. It's got 10 points on the lines, that Golden Gate, and of course that's the El Camino Real Derby. Joel, this race hasn't really proven to have a lot of Derby horses coming out of it, but I want to talk about one horse in here, Sheer Flattery. It's interesting. He ran just 2 weeks ago. I mean, obviously his connections were not happy with the outcome there. He got in some trouble. He went really wide in the race. What do you think about bringing a horse that you're planning on running in the Kentucky Derby or trying to, coming back in 2 weeks this early?
I think they clearly felt that he came out of his last race having not run the way that they expected him to. He got in some trouble. Probably came out as if he hadn't run a race. I mean, it was 2 weeks ago. They've already worked him back, and now they've got him entered in here. Now, this is on the Tapeta surface. That's why, even though they're giving away 10 points, this has not been a Kentucky Derby prep worth really paying attention to, because these synthetic horses usually don't translate on to the top Grade 1 type colts. But Sheer Flattery is a late developing colt. He was a favorite in the Bob Lewis, or one of the horses to beat in there. If he can rebound in here, maybe that buys him a ticket, on the Santa Anita Derby Trail, to where he'll have to face American Anthem, Gormley, those type colts, to maybe prove that he can be a late comer on the Derby Trail with Jerry Hollendorfer. But really, when I look at the race, it's really, he's the only one that I feel is all that interesting, in my opinion. I mean, you've got the Square Eddie colt in there as well for Doug O'Neill, but again, a Calbred sort, not exactly sure he's going to be a Kentucky Derby type horse. So to me, the biggest race to pay attention to is that Monday President's Day Southwest Stakes. And I think another interesting colt in there that we didn't mention is Silver Dust. Pay attention to him. Son of Tappet, broke his maiden impressively at Churchill. I think he's a late comer, should love 2 turns. So he's another colt in that Southwest I'll be paying attention to. So a key weekend.
All right, thank you, Joel, and thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll recap the El Camino Real Derby and also the Southwest Stakes.